Okay, welcome to our very first show. This is very business-minded. We started this show to, give some information about business, how to start, how startups work, and get some industry professionals, like Fabian here today.
Hello.
And what we're going to do is we are going to try to add value to our business community. So I'm the director of Tail Media Limited. And we work with a lot of businesses, startups at some idea generation stage, doing video promos, video adverts. And we thought, why not add some value to our business community? So what we're going to do is we are going to have some shows, maybe twice a month or thrice a month, all depending on how you guys react, how you guys give feedback to our first show. And that's how what we're going to do in this show. So today we have a very special guest, one of my really good friends as well. We used to study our masters together at LSBU.
That's right.
And he works with startups and especially in the idea generation stage, giving away funding. So he's a person who approves funding to startups actually, right? So let's ask him as to what he's doing right now and how he can give some tips to get funding to your startup or for your idea. So Fabian, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming, actually. It's our first show. So tell our viewers about who you are and what you do currently,
So I'm going to start with who I am, or before that, who I was, where I'm coming from.
Perfect.
So my background is, I went through an international university study program, studied in Austria, where I'm from, and then went to Denmark, to South Korea, and then to London. And, got some degrees on the way.
All around the world.
And I have been entrepreneurially active before the job I'm in now. I started a couple of businesses. We had a business venture together at some point, and I've originally my job before I even went to university, I was working in the nonprofit sector.
Right.
And then from that, where you have to be kind of entrepreneurial to, find the money to do whatever you do to make the world a better place.
Exactly.
Or whatever your nonprofit does, right?
Yeah.
So from that, I went into consulting for a bit, rather short endeavor, and then started my own companies. Actually, the first one in South Korea. I always say I became a millionaire at 24 in South Korea.
I remember that.
The first million, yes. Just don't ask what currency it was.
You're
but
right.
I made my first million at 24 in South Korea.
Right.
So yeah, from that angle, and then from our project and a couple of other projects in Austria, I kind of know the founder side, especially the early stage. So only 2 of my companies, you could say, really made it past that first stage. As
of course, yeah, it happens
that's
to
rarely anybody really kicks off with the first. Some do.
Indeed.
Anyway, so that was my background, and coming from that, I kind of went into social entrepreneurship, and then into academia from LSBU, where we studied together. Kind of was one of the first people to try to narrow in, focus in on that. It's actually not true. Some people were actually there before me, but I wanted to do my PhD on that, and that, long story short, I was then recruited from Vienna to run an accelerator program, basically, for social startups. That was later stage. So after the prototype, we call it the post-pilot stage.
Right, okay.
So they have something, they know it works, and now they want to prepare for scaling. And now in my main project or main work right now, I do research on impact investing, so on funding for social startups, social innovation.
Right.
And on the other hand, I'm working with the Austrian Research Promotion Agency.
Okay.
Which is, as you mentioned, we give funding to companies, to young startups, and now start a new funding program for social innovation as well. Right. So that's kind of the background. And what I do in my current job, and I'm going to focus in on this a bit more, at the FFG, which is the Research Promotion Agency.
Right.
They have different programs that basically fund innovation. And as we all know, very often innovation comes from startups.
Indeed, yeah.
So they come with applications, they say what they have done, what they want to do. Depending on the program, it's different stage. The one that I'm mainly working in that It's called impact innovation. It's not solely exclusively for social startups,
Okay.
but it's also for any kind of early stage problem or problem
Solvers.
Solvers. Thank you.
Right.
Yes, early stage solvers. So you start from a problem, and then you work with innovative methods to kind of find a solution to that. And we fund this process of finding a solution. We help
Right.
with that, with the funding.
Right.
So, and this we're already in the first split in how the answers to the question that we're working on, or that we're talking about today,
Right.
can be different. It depends on what stage you're in, what funding you want to look for.
Right. Yes. So talking about funding. There's always this this thing around funding, right? Like businesses pitch all the time to get some funding. But with my experience, even I have done this. Like I have no idea when I go, in front of a panel, and sometimes, like we know the theories behind it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, should I say this, or should I talk about the problem first, or like what do they really want to hear from a candidate,
Yeah.
right? So that's a huge big deal especially for a student. These are all young generation
Yeah.
coming up and
Yeah.
like pitching in front of a panel. So there's always a kind of problematic in a way to find the right solution or what to actually say, what's right and what's wrong, right? So that's why I just wanted to have a chat with you as to what do you think about this whole process, and what do you think are the most important things?
Yes. Well, I wanna start with two things that you need to know before you go out and ask for funding.
Right.
And then I'm gonna kind of zoom in on each of those. One is you need to know yourself as in the company and the solution you provide and the problem you're working with. That's the first thing. You need to know what do I actually do.
Okay.
And that needs to be kind of solid. And if you know that there are certain things that you don't know, you need to be aware of that.
Right.
But more importantly, it's kind of what industry do I fit in? Who are my competitors? I mean, this is the classics. You hear this
Yeah.
everywhere.
Right.
But you do need to know all these things to then take the next step and say, okay, I'm in, I don't know, say the food processing industry.
Right.
My startup is in the food processing industry, and then from there you can look for, okay, who are the people I want money for? I
Right.
want money from.
Right.
So that could be, so if I look for venture capital, I want to be looking at venture capital companies that have us either focus on this or are open to this idea, and then from there I go to, okay, what is their their story, what is their background, and then when you know this, kind of where you're going to and what you want from them, and you know who you are yourself, then
Right.
you can start working on the pitch. How does that fit?
Right.
So it's kind of the very same product, very same company may be presented very differently, always truthful, but very
Right.
differently to different kinds of grant givers or funders,
yeah.
depending on the situation. So
Right.
if I go for example, where I work, the kind of early stage funding we do, we ask for quite different things than a venture capitalist would ask for,
Right.
or seed funding in a seed funding round that you'd I don't know, Shark Tank or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Where you have a very different kind of mindset there. What we do as a grant giving agency,
Right.
we want to know what is the impact on your funding.
Okay.
What is the outcome for society, for the industry that you're in, or your benefactors, or even your clients, whoever your product, your service is geared at. What is the outcome? What does this mean for society, and what is the real problem you're solving with this?
Right.
Whereas an investor that would actually give you money to then get money back,
Right.
they would mainly be interested in, okay, what is the market? How much are you selling it for? What is the potential for me in this? What is the scaling potential? How much
Right.
money can I make out of this? And
Right.
you can address both of those, but you need to know who I'm pitching to and what is their priorities.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to know who you're pitching to.
Yes, exactly.
So your pitch can be different. Like when you're
Yeah.
pitching to
Yeah.
different
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
stakeholders in a way.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So wow, that's incredible to know, because sometimes we, like, even I have done this in the past. Like when I prepare for a pitch. I just look at the whole background of, like who am I catering to, who are my stakeholders are, and just create a basic pitch as to, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Like if someone wants me to talk at an event, I'll be like, oh yeah, I have a pitch and I have a talk. But I don't think it works in what you're saying is like, it doesn't work. You have to be...
If you have one general pitch.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it depends. If you're talking at an event with a bunch of different stakeholders there, you can either say, okay, I know there's these kind of investors there and a bunch of other people, but I want to reach these investors. These are the people I want to get my message across to.
Right.
So I gear my pitch towards those. But if you know, okay, this is a big fair, whatever, a lot of people, a lot of different ones, it can be fair enough to just give a general overview and like a generalistic pitch where you address everything but don't really go into detail, because this might address many different people. So you might get, I don't know, say media contacts out of that, or investors or customers. They might, in some cases, be all at the same event. Right. But if you're at an investors event, or if you're actually pitching at something like Shark Tank, and there's a bunch of these, then you can really zoom in. What do they want, and what do I have that I can deliver for them, and how do I package what I do so that it's really interesting for them? And this is the core, especially for a grant giving situation, but also for venture capital or investors. You need to know what is it they're looking for. It's not enough to tell them, I'm awesome, we're great because we're doing this and we've already sold this much.
Right.
Okay, but why is this interesting for them? Right. It's a little bit like when you're applying to a job. Right?
Okay, yeah.
You don't just tell them, I'm awesome. You might, and it might work, but usually it helps if you tell them, this is why I'm good for you as a company. And it's even more important for investors, and especially early stage, because you're not only going in for the money. And this is another thing when you're zooming in on yourself and your company and your startup, and when you're looking at, okay, who are we, what do we need? Very often, very early stage ventures, especially in the social enterprise world, but also in other sectors, they think, oh, okay, we want to do this now. We need money. But when I've talked to some investors, then say, okay, when they ask, so what do you need the money for? And they kind of coach them and realize you don't need money.
Yeah.
You need certain things. You need, for example, outreach, or you need a tech person or a partner. But that's not always money.
Yeah.
So then before you jump at investors and throw 20% of your shares at them to get, I don't know how many thousand euros or pounds or whatever, think about, okay, can we solve this without money? Because the later you start raising money, the more you can already show to investors or to grant givers.
Your capability.
Yes, exactly. You say, okay, we've already done this, and we've worked with this institute or with this partner, and we know so much about this problem now, and we know how we want to tackle it. This is how we want to tackle it, and that's what we need the money for. So you have a much better answer for an investor. This is how we want to do this. So this is part of knowing your venture, knowing your direction, actually going through your own business plan and your own organization, if you have one, or your ideas first, and then at some point you're going to realize, okay, we need money, and then you go to, okay, this person has the money for us because we have already spent this much time analyzing the problem, we have spent this much time building a solution or designing a solution, now we need money for this specific thing. And that's a very good answer for an investor when they say, okay, so what do you want to do with my money? Oh, we want to grow.
Yes.
Okay,
that's
but
gonna be,
what's your real, what's the next steps? And the more precisely you can answer these questions, the better. So know yourself, know where you are in the process, be honest. You may not know whether some of your solutions may work or not, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, it's better to be honest and tell that you don't know the solution as of yet.
Yes.
Rather than lying about it and getting caught in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
That's horrible.
But very often, venture capitalists and early stage investors, they invest in the team as much as in the idea, if not more.
Right.
Because at this early stage, whatever the solution may be, it may turn out to be something completely different over time, right?
Yeah.
So as you're working on this, you could figure out, maybe we were thinking this is a good idea, but actually, sticky notes is a great example of that.
Oh,
Do you know
yeah.
the story behind Post-it sticky notes?
No.
So they were actually looking for glue that would stick really hard
Okay.
and would be really strong.
Right.
And that didn't work. They came up with something that sticks, and you can put it on something and it sticks. You take it off and you put it on somewhere else and it still
And it
sticks.
sticks.
But that's not what they wanted. But in the end, it's a great product.
Yeah.
Now everybody uses sticky
everyone's
notes.
using
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
But that was not what they started out looking
Right.
for.
Yeah.
So that's why the team is as important, or usually more important than the idea.
And the idea, isn't it? I think I have a personal story behind it. Like when I started Tail Media, like it wasn't this that I was picturing my company is gonna turn into in 1 or 2 years. Like it's 1 year now that I started the company. And when I started, I think we even discussed this, right?
Yeah.
Like we had ideas of having events, having like we were everywhere. Our ideas were everywhere, right? And then after a year, I'm just thinking, wow, if I did, because my plan was to do everything basically, and then throughout that year, I had to refine my ideas and be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and this wasn't the original plan. I never thought of doing live productions, and I never thought of doing 360 productions, which we are doing the research now. And we never thought that we would go into the AR and VR technologies in the future. Now we are doing the research to see what the customer would benefit, whether they'll benefit, with these new technologies. But as you said, it's actually the team behind that matters, right? Sometimes when we have pitched in front of panels quite a few times.
Yeah.
We have made a mess. And sometimes we have like nailed it, and sometimes we have like completely destroyed our pitch. And like,
I remember that one time where I said, okay, I don't know what it was exactly. We're not going to talk about this.
Yeah.
This one we're going to try to bury. We're not going to talk about it. And then we ended up just talking about it. Just banging on about
and
this
it
one.
was a disaster.
It was a disaster.
But so talking about funding, now you meet a lot of these startups and different ideas. Now we always talk about what's the right thing to do, right? So what's the wrong way of doing it? You must be seeing a lot of wrong stuff around there, the wrong ideas, like wrong pictures, and what do you think? Just tell us what not to do, like what are the worst case scenarios or worst stuff that you've heard?
Okay. I have a couple of examples for that. I'm not going to name names.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
So one thing that we get a lot now is buzzword bingo, really. Mm-hmm. So we have this solution, and we're gonna do this, and to make it better, we're gonna do it with blockchain. And you think, okay, I get what you're doing,
right.
I get the problem. I do not see what blockchain has to do with it. And so it's a little bit like that now, or more and more that this is just becoming. Blockchain is one example. I'm gonna give you a few more in a minute.
Right.
It's just a buzzword, and everybody uses it, but you need to know why. Yeah. And we had a few applications for blockchain solutions, and when usually there's like one person looking at it from the business side and one from the actual technical IT or whatever side it is, like from the actual content side, more or less. And when that person would kind of press the team in the face-to-face conversation, so why not just a Google Docs? And in some cases, a Google Docs would do exactly what they wanted to build, right?
Why make it?
So why make a company that does the same, a lot more expensive, a lot more complex to handle, when there is a super easy and free to use solution out there?
Right.
What's your value?
Yeah.
But it's blockchain. Blockchain is like, right? That's great now. And there's a lot of stuff like that going around, and it's similar with just. We're using design thinking now, and when I read applications, some of those applications, just after the introduction, I already think, this is just another buzzword bingo game.
You get it from the start.
And even if the solution may be good, if what they want to do makes sense, because they dress it up in this startup language to make it sound fancy, this can actually be off-putting. Because I think, you're not really giving me the real juice. You're just selling me a story that everybody else is selling too, right? So yeah, just one buzzword after the other.
Buzzwording it out, yeah.
And this can be off-putting.
Yeah.
Because I have like a bunch of applications on my desk, and I look through them, and sometimes, you know, you read through them and you think, wow, who wrote this? Was that like a kindergarten child?
Yeah.
What? But then you talk to the person and you realize they're really super into what they're doing. They're just not really good at writing business plans, writing applications.
Right.
So they just need kind of a partner for it. But the solution they're working on is good.
Yeah.
So then you can help them, and then you can say, okay, there's a lot of potential there. And it's good that they present it in their own language, because then it's authentic.
Yeah.
And then when I talk to them, I have the feeling that
Advantage of, you know, getting it done.
yeah, and they're real with me.
Yeah.
I don't, and I mean, I'm not saying everybody who uses design thinking buzzword bingo language is lying, but sometimes it can come across like that. So I suppose one thing not to do is to dress up whatever you do to make it sound nice.
Or exaggerated with fancy and
Yes,
buzzwords. And
exactly. If this has nothing to do with what you're actually doing. And for everything you do and everything you write in a business plan, think about, do we actually need this? It's okay to have a lean business plan.
Right.
So that's one thing not to do, just to dress it up. It may be a different matter if you're actually using, say, design thinking as a method, and you're applying for a funder that only works with startups that use design thinking. Right. In that case, put it in, but be sure to actually be using it. If they, and that's another thing not to do, this is the second one, go to everyone because they have money.
Oh.
Look for the ones that fit your company, but because even if you find one that wouldn't really fit, but you convince them that they should fund you, it's going to lead to problems later down the road. Because they're looking for something, right? And you pretend that you have that to get the money.
Right.
And the short term is good because you get the money.
Right.
But in the long term, they're expecting you to deliver on something that was never really in your business plan or in your mind. You only said you could do this for this investor. Yeah, and this, don't do that. Be honest, and if you don't find one that will fund you as you are, maybe think about your business model again, about what you're doing.
But at the same time, can it be a good thing as well? Because some people tend to say, some of the startups that I used to work with, they used to say, you know, like, go speak at panels. Maybe if there are people who are funding, just go speak to them. Just, you know, like, maybe you won't receive any funding. Yeah. But then you'll gain experience from it.
Yes.
So how does that correlate with, you know, what you just said?
That's a good point there. I had a discussion for a podcast with a good friend of mine. Right. Where he was coming from the non-profit side or social enterprise side, and he said he would always or often just apply for grants, knowing he wouldn't get them, but hoping for feedback. And as an analyst assessing grants, there are two sides of this. Okay. One is obviously it's a learning, and you can tell if you talk to someone whether they have gone through a certain learning process. Right. On the other hand, it's work for me. So if I go through your application and that's a lot of work, and you're just doing it for the feedback, and then you, knowing that you can't get in, this might, and if this is just plainly obvious, this could backfire. Whereas if, like you say, just speaking on panels or you know, giving presentations at events, if you get the chance to do that, sure, why not? And ask for feedback. Go to conferences if that's possible in your industry.
But not every funder around. You go around, you know, asking for funding.
Well, if you're looking for feedback, ask for feedback.
Yeah, not for funding.
Not for funding, exactly.
Well, you got a good point there. You know, feedback and funding
can be different. Yeah, exactly.
Can be different. Yeah.
Sometimes you ask for funding, looking for funding, and you receive feedback. Use it, take it, implement it, and then ask again for funding, or see if maybe the feedback kind of turns you into a different direction anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say that maybe that's a good way of putting it. Actually, if you want feedback, ask for feedback. Do not ask for funding. Because usually the people giving out funding are happy to give you feedback. And sometimes they may just plainly say, we're not the right people for you. We're not the right organization. We're not interested in the kind of stuff you do. It looks great, sounds great, but it's just not for us. But here are a few contacts, talk to them, tell them you're coming from me, that might help.
Right.
So,
there can be the I don't know, like positive points in like asking for funding. You know, like, I think it's great to get those feedback as well. But if you're asking for feedback, then ask for feedback, not money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It can be, say, if you're on a panel or somewhere on a stage where a lot of people are there listening to you.
Right.
Then people go there to listen, so you're not stealing their time. So you might as well, put it out there. Oh, we're looking for funding and feedback and contact us, and this is what we do, blah, blah, blah. Why not? But actually, sending documents to an investor or to a grant agency for funding when you really just want the feedback, or when you also if you want funding, make sure it's a fit. Make sure they fund what you do. Otherwise, you're just wasting their money, and you're wasting their time and your time, and you're not getting the money.
And money as well, because they put their time and effort.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like time
exactly.
is money in a way in the business world.
Yeah.
So, talking about so going through all these applications, you must have loads of experience. Going through all these applications and piles and piles of files around you. What are the businesses that you think that that would shape up the future in a way, like, because that's where the funding, because you always talk about, they have to let us know what you can do to the community, to the business world, these ideas should be great in a specific way, right? Because every idea is great. Like for me, if I come up with an idea, I'll be like, oh, I have a great idea. I wouldn't say, oh, I have a bad idea.
I have a bad idea. Let's make it a business.
It's not going to work. So what do you think, like in terms of the future, what are the businesses that you think that would take over the funding kind of world, I would say?
That's interesting. We're witnessing waves of buzzwords. Right. At a certain point, everybody thinks, oh, this is the next generation and this is what's going to happen. And I just read, for my research, I just read a book about a methodology, how to gather data.
Right.
And they mentioned this, don't want to go into the details, that's not so important, but they mentioned, this is very good for gathering know-how and experience that you can then turn into an artificial intelligence or use this for all algorithms that will then perform tasks that only humans have performed, because this is now the time where this is happening, right? But now we're at the edge of where this is taken over and this is becoming more and more important. And then I realized this book is from 1994. So it sounds exactly like it was written today, but it's almost 30 years old.
Yeah, it's 30 years. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. So I think one has to be careful when we look at, this is shaping the future now, and this is changing, and then you think, wait a minute, but certain things there have been around for a long time, and artificial intelligence, as it works now, isn't so new. It's kind of a buzzword now, and it's easier to get this closer to customers through the internet and digitization and all that.
Right.
But it has been around for a while, so it's not like we're changing super fast, right?
Right.
So I'm not sure. And this keeps changing depending on what kind of applications I see and what kind of ideas I see and what kind of market I see around it. But my suspicion at the moment will be that for certain things that are portrayed to be the future, we're actually on the edge of how much they can do. So I think the real game changes that are to come, we don't know that yet. I don't think it's going to be artificial intelligence. I don't think it's going to be blockchain.
Oh, this is interesting.
Those things have a future in certain industries, in certain areas.
Right.
But I don't think that for example, and if we have this same kind of setting like this in 20 years again, you may correct me.
Right.
But I don't think that cryptocurrency is going to take over completely.
Right.
The way we know it now. I mean, the cryptocurrency and blockchain as technology behind money is something that might work. I'm not 100% convinced.
Right.
But then how it's embedded in society,
Right.
that it's kind of non-governmental or stateless currency, I don't really see that becoming a big thing.
Right.
Also because, I mean, if you look around, how many startups now work with blockchain and cryptocurrency solutions, it's not new anymore. So it's just recycling the same thing, framing it a bit differently. But that too has been around for more than 10 years now.
It is actually.
And if you look at the volatility of Bitcoin,
oh yeah.
and how much this has changed over time, it's not that big a thing. It makes a lot of noise, but it's not really that important. That important for our economy. To give you an example, again sticking with the cryptocurrency market. I mean, it's extremely volatile, but it's kind of averaging out between 200 and 300 billion dollars worldwide of assets invested in cryptocurrency at the moment.
Right.
And then I don't know if you know the concept of impact investing. So money invested in a social cause that gives you back, you get back your money and you trigger social welfare or social
well-being or,
exactly, like some kind of social impact. It's about the same amount of money, but we don't hear about it as much.
Right.
So it's one thing is just making a lot of noise. The other one isn't. If you look at the numbers, they're quite similar.
Right.
So obviously one can be measured better than the other, but it's round about the same size of market for it.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there was something that's been around that we kind of saw but completely underestimated, that in 10, 20, 50, 100 years, people are going to say, well, obviously this made the future. And when looking back, that was it.
Yeah.
When you now look back, the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at that time, when the first cars were on the roads, he said, oh, this is a temporary thing. We're going to stick with horses and carriages. He was convinced of this. There was the emperor, right? He was running one of these central empires of Europe at that time. Look where it is now. The whole empire crumbled. Now it's a bunch of tiny countries. So he was obviously wrong, not only in that sense. But from his perspective at that time, that was just, nothing really big. And I'm sure there's other things around that we may see now, but we're not really aware of them.
Right.
That
might be a big players.
Exactly. That will really change the future. When you look at the whole sustainability hype that's coming now, and going back to natural resources and avoiding plastic and using recyclable stuff and not cut down the rainforest and plant trees. We're going kind of away from this super sci-fi Star Wars-like world that people would have expected a few decades ago, maybe. And we're back to downsizing, thinking twice about, do I need another shirt? So with this comes a complete economic change as well, that changes the social, potentially might change the social structures as well, and that will open needs and interests that we don't see now, but that will eventually, looking back, make a lot of sense.
Of course, yeah. So there's a big change coming as well.
Yes, and
so talking about the change now, this is a question that I was asking myself as well, and most of the businesses that I speak to doesn't understand that there's this timeline. We were talking about this. We were having a chat the other day, I remember. Like, the timing of a product or an idea can be significant, right? So this particular area is like a vast area that we might need another show for this, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
But like, I think the funding can be, I think, it can also be changed depending on the timing of a particular idea, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's. Do you have any experiences?
Well, I had an interesting conversation with a friend this morning, actually, and we talked about. Or was last night anyway. We talked about how little we really know. So the more of an expert you become over time, and I've seen this in kind of the academic world as well as the professional world, the more you realize that you don't really know that much and nobody really knows everything. It's kind of like the realization that, oh, my dad doesn't know everything. And it kind of goes on like that, like, oh, nobody knows everything. Nobody really understands the big picture. And it's the same with investors or funders.
Right.
They don't see everything. They just see everything through their goggles or their glasses, their perspective. So if something comes up now that might work, but in their opinion, because now blockchain is the big thing, they're not gonna invest in, I don't know, light bulbs that grow from trees. I don't know. You know, because blockchain is the thing. But if you come back a few years later, when blockchain is not as hot anymore because it's been around for 20 years now, and we still don't really see any big change from that it brings to society. So probably not that. Then they may be open for other ideas. So I think timing is very important. If you think about, I mean, the big example would be Airbnb.
Right.
They launched essentially the same idea 3 or 4 times until it worked.
Okay, all right. I didn't know that actually.
So there was a few approaches. Then the smartphone, I think it was Nokia or BlackBerry. I think it was Nokia actually. Right. They had a smartphone that did more or less exactly the same thing as the first iPhone did, but they had it 10 years earlier, and nobody was interested in it. Also because the internet wasn't there yet, not at that level. So there was a lot of I mean, the technological part of it was there, but in the acceptance of people and in the awareness, it was not there to that extent.
Indeed, yeah.
So I'd say that's a big.
I always have this example where, you know, like on the other day I was telling this to another startup, and the idea was like the right timing is essential, even for funding or even you know, like to go to a panel, you know. Speaking about the idea, like let's say there's a guy with there's an idea about this great combustion engine, all right, that's really fuel efficient, better than any engine in the world right now. But right now, it's not going to be a good idea because everyone's talking about the environment, like your carbon footprint, right? People will be talking about, oh, okay, what about renewable energy?
Yes.
Let's an electric car that goes like, let's say 500, 600 miles.
Absolutely, yeah.
To charge. That would be a great idea.
Agreed,
Even though there will be a lot of technical elements that you know, like backs up this great combustion engine.
And that very same idea 25 years ago would have gone boom.
Everyone would have been given funds for that, right? So I think it's timing. For this, we'll have to have a separate discussion on a separate.
Just one more thing about the timing, because I had that in recently as well. It's also other kind of timing. It's also how you in what mood you get to your investor. I had a meeting a while back that went really badly because the person I was meeting with just had a bad morning. That was the first thing they told me when they walked in. Oh, this happened this morning. I was and then the meeting just went down south from there. Nothing productive came out of that. Yeah, and there's studies that. I mean, obviously, to some extent, these are things you cannot plan, but sometimes they're things that you can plan.
Right.
There's about in jails, in a jail. Maybe we can link this later to this if I find the article. They were looking at judges that were deciding about certain prisoners whether or not they would be released early, right? Okay. And get out on probation. Right. More or less. Well, yeah, pretty much. So somebody just looked at this, looked at, you know, for over multiple of those, they would, I don't know, say they'd be once a month, there'd be this day, and everybody who would apply for this would then be reviewed by the judges, and they'd make a decision whether or not that person would be allowed to go out early. And someone just looked at all the decisions and kind of mapped them and looked at the connections and realized that the chance of being released early went down significantly the closer the judges got to lunch. And so right before lunch, your chance of being released early, if your application was reviewed just before lunch, the chance of getting released early was essentially 0. Really? Right after lunch, it was 50-60%. So it was much higher if they, just depending on had they had something to eat before or after they were looking at your your file. And this, I mean, this is an extreme case and it's crazy, but it can be a similar thing with investors. So if you get a chance to talk to an investor, give them your elevator speech,
Right.
and they don't really seem that interested, or they seem absent, or they're not in a good mood,
Right.
don't push it.
Yeah.
That's obviously you cannot influence whether they're in a good mood or not. But if you
Right.
realize they're not,
Right.
don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Just come back later, get a card, give them your business
Maybe
card.
on a different day, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and the other thing is like you can ask us questions, and Fabian's here to answer them. What you can do is like go onto our chat and send us some questions. If we can select some of these questions and answer those. And the other thing, Fabian, talking about all these startups and all these fundings and all this glamour kind of, I would say, I would call it glamour behind these businesses. Yeah. Let's talk about how hard it can be for businesses to gain funding. Because some people, when they start, I think, when we start, everyone, we all have this, right?
Yeah.
We think that, oh, it's going to be a really smooth sailing, you know, I'm going to get some funding, and from there, you know, I'm going to be a millionaire or a billionaire. But we have experience on this, you know, like going to so many, you know, like panels, talking about our business. What do you think about this, gathering funding and this whole journey as a whole?
Yeah, and there are different things to this. There's one secret to a successful business.
Right.
And that secret is just get a good product.
Right.
That's the core secret of a good business. Whatever you're selling, make sure it's good. But I mean, and this is the core. And surprisingly, a lot of businesses, some that got really big, don't have that. At least not to the point where they communicate it. Right. I mean, there are companies that and this is part of the glamour and why I'm very skeptical towards some of those really fast-growing startups. They are grant dependent, so they do a first funding round, then they do a second funding round, they go for a third funding round, and after 10 years they haven't made a single cent in profits. You think, what? This is, for me, this is just artificial. This is just purely artificial, boosting economy or boosting business that is not really, you know.
Of course, isn't it?
So yeah, that's I would recommend to avoid this. Even though it may be glamorous to, after 4 years, have this massive office with like 250 people, and the bigger this gets, the easier it gets to, you know, get another round and get more people attracted, because we have grown in employees by like a factor of 2,000% in the last 3 years. Well, great, but did you make any profit? Is your product working? And when you look at this, we've seen this just recently with WeWork.
Okay.
I don't know if you were following this.
I think I've heard about this. I think someone was talking about WeWork.
So they've been planning.
They are the fastest growing startup, right?
Yes, they were highly evaluated. They were massive startup, co-working spaces.
Okay. Yes, indeed.
Global co-working spaces.
WeWork. Yeah.
And then they wanted to go to the stock market, do an IPO.
Okay.
And when they kind of were floating the stock price, they realized that they were evaluated much lower than the share price than they were hoping for.
Right.
And suddenly, they hadn't really made a profit before. They had made turnover and all, but they had been so much focused on scaling that they had forgotten to really build a solid business case. And now investors are kind of getting that.
Right.
So and it's a similar thing with Facebook that's now trying to, I mean, obviously Facebook is profitable, but with Libra, their cryptocurrency, MasterCard and some of the big ones have pulled out because they just apparently don't see the value behind it. So I think that the small entrepreneur that starts a cupcake bakery in their town from scratch, you know, bootstrapped, without big investment, for me, that's the real art of entrepreneurship. You don't go to people who, you know, spray and pray for good results.
Indeed,
and just, you know, throw the money at anything that kind of sounds good. Yeah, exactly. And they just throw millions out and know that one out of their 70 investments is going to be so big that it's going to cover all the other losses. But you actually start from nothing and you build a company out of it. So I think this is this is a lot less glamorous, to use the word that you were using. And it's probably not as big, and it's not as fancy, and you're not going to be making millions in turnover in a few years, but it's a much more
It's a solid
business.
growth there,
exactly,
right?
yeah. You don't want to grow too fast. Some companies can kind of get over this valley of death where they need to grow and still not make any money. And at some point, when you're really big, then it works. Then you can, again, we were talking about this last night, you just buy another company and suddenly you have a market.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you got a point there, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're big enough and you have had enough investors, then that's fine, right? But I think as an entrepreneur, it's important to get the right size from the beginning, and then think about, do you really need the funding you're looking for? Do you really need this much money? Do you really need to scale this fast?
Right.
Or maybe it's more healthy to stay a bit smaller and grow slower.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it would be more fun to work in a small team.
Of course.
Rather than
it's more
explode,
fun,
right?
And then, that's totally, you got a point there. And I always think that getting a lot of money and then, like it's kind of like, I saw this was it on Shark Tank? I think this person came in like asking for money, but then he was like making a loss. And then he has been given grants and then...
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, I don't know whether it's a Shark Tank, but definitely I remember one of the people in the panel. They were like, you are running a business with with people's money and you don't understand the value of the money.
Yes, yeah.
So when you're asking for grants, is really important.
Well, and the truth is, a lot of those startups that are out there, a lot of those companies that are out there, the real business model is getting to another funding round.
Exactly. That's
so getting another bunch of investors to throw money at you.
Yeah.
And that's to me that you're not creating any value. You're not doing anything good for the world.
Yeah.
You're not even doing anything good for yourself, right?
People's money,
yeah,
basically.
Exactly. So what is the point of that? And other than, and that brings me back to the word you used, the glamour of it.
Right, exactly.
And
the glamour,
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is, now we are going to go to a short break, gather some questions, and we are going to do the ending of our program.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. And we'll go to a short break, guys. Okay, so we have a specific question presented by one of the students at LSBU. The question is, tech startups need a lot of capital, right? Now we were talking about,
Right.
like we were talking about, oh, well, don't go after money at first and,
Yeah.
try to, like get a natural growth from the company. But there are certain, okay, let's forget about tech startups. In this case, if there's an idea where we need a lot of capital to start.
Yeah.
So how we can manage those kind of scenarios, Fabian?
Yes. Good question. Fair enough. So maybe to clarify, my point was not necessarily avoid any kind of funding beforehand. But if you do need, and that's very often you do need that. I mean, it doesn't have to be a super innovative tech company. It could be a brewery. Breweries
Right.
need a lot of, because they have big equipment,
Of course, indeed, yeah.
So they need a lot of equipment and therefore capital to start with. The thing is, if you need a lot of capital, make a plan for how long you need it for and when you pay it back. A lot of investors, especially early stage investors, expect when they give you 150,000, which is a lot in the early stages, but you might need that for a big tech company. They expect, not all of them, but many, to have to throw as much at you again at a later point.
Right.
So there is kind of a buffer. They're not going to just let you die, but be sure to look at how much money do I need. Be honest about that with your investors. Don't just small in it because you think it's going to sound nice.
Right.
They're going to see that. Tell them flat out, we need $1.5 million over the next 5 years to fly. But then make sure you fly after 5 years.
Exactly.
Don't start 3 years later to look for more money and go for another round and tell them the same story. We need another 1.5 million, or maybe because you already have 45 employees at that point. Oh, we need 3 million to fly in 7 years. And then, because this is kind of the grant dependency.
Exactly.
It's fair, fine to get a lot of money. Ideally, you can get that money from a bank.
Right.
Get a loan and then pay that back over time. But they want some kind of guarantee. So either take your house or some kind of assets. And if you don't have that, you need an investor or a grant.
Yeah, that's.
But plan for making money and paying that back as soon as possible.
So you have to have a proper plan as to where you put your money in, and what the outcome will be. A proper financial plan basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And be sure that there's a business model and a concept that you can honestly present and believe in, that you will be able to pay this money back.
With proper research as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, some people just come up with ideas without proper research. Maybe it can be a really great idea. But I have seen this. Like, they present this idea beautifully, but there's no, research behind it. Like, the panel will ask, oh, what's the market size of this? The potential growth of this business? And no idea.
Well, the research point is a good point, because you have to be, again, with this, you have to be careful. I was working with or had an application recently where they had to, gone through the research in a tick box manner. There's, customer, client, we thought about this here, yeah, because I would buy this, and I have 3 friends who would buy this. It's a great product.
Yeah.
And then we looked at this, and all the 3 friends were from the exact same peer group.
Right. So
And worse yet, that was something that even for customers, it requires a lot of time invested. And they asked students whether they would be willing to do this and pay for it at a later point. So obviously they said yes, not realizing that they'd have no time later to consume this product.
Yeah.
So this is, they feel they've done the research, but then when you feedback back to them, who are your clients? I don't see them. It's these people, we've talked to them. You're like, no, you've talked to your friends, and that's fair enough. But I need a bigger picture to understand that.
Wow, that's really important as well, isn't it? Like, that's something that I didn't think of. Like, research, proper research.
Yeah.
Don't get your friends to do, to be like, hey, do you like my product? They'll always say yes.
And don't just do the research to have an answer for an investor.
Yeah.
Do research so you know for yourself who the client is. It's not just about convincing the investor. And this maybe brings me back to my starting point. There's two things you need to know. And the first and central point is, who are you? Who is your company? Who's your market? Who are your customers? How does all that work together? And when you know this first, then you can go to an investor, and then you need to know who's the investor and how do I need to present what I've got and what I want to do in a nice story so it fits this investor.
Right.
And then when this both fits together, then you can endeavor on a great journey together. But this only works if it all fits together, if you know what you're doing, if you can honestly present that to an investor, and they really buy into it.
So 2 main points, as you said. Know your investor and know what your product is or service is.
Yes, I'd actually turn this around. First, know your company, know your product, know what you do. And second, if you need money from an investor, if you want money from an investor, look at the investor and know the investor.
Perfect. So it has been a great show, actually. We had an amazing conversation about, like, I learned a lot, talking to you. And whenever he's in London, we always have a amazing chat about businesses, about, like, investment and...
Usually we do it over a pint, though, not over a cup of tea.
Yeah. We can get a pint next time.
Let's do that. Let's repeat this over a pint next time. Yeah.
So what we can do is we're going to bring in Fabian on a later date as well, talking with a different panel, and the whole background will be different. We are going to get into our London office to continue this program, it all depends on your feedback, guys. So if you got some value from this session, just leave a feedback, like just give us a comment about it, like it, or if you dislike it, and
tell us why.
And tell us why. Tell us why you don't like it. So I always tell my if I speak to some businesses, if you get bad or negative feedback, you always have to know why. If you don't know why you received bad feedback, there's no value in it. Absolutely. And I love bad feedback, negative feedback. You learn from those.
Yeah, exactly.
So let us know what you think. And let us know what are the topics that you want us to discuss. So I'll get the industry professionals to talk about those particular topics, right? And Fabian will be back. So thank you, Fabian, for coming all the way from Austria.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. He's all the way from Austria.
Yes, just came here for this.
Yeah, indeed. So thank you, Fabian, for that again. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, just subscribe to our channel. Subscribe. Did I just say sub? But subscribe to our channel, guys. All right. And Fabian's on LinkedIn. What are the social media platforms that you're in? If someone wants to
LinkedIn is probably the best one. You find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook. But I'm only really active on LinkedIn. So all of them I mainly used to read. I don't post much, but yeah, that's where you can find me. You can contact me in all of them.
Perfect. So Fabian Scholda, and I'll leave all the maybe the links or of your LinkedIn, and I'll put in all the research papers if you want to post any, so people could check it out. And thank you very much for joining us, and you can please subscribe. Let us know what you think. Let us know the topics you want us to talk about the next time. And thank you very much. And this is the end of our program.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, and have a good Halloween, actually.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.